Today we're going to look at the basics of conditional formatting. So let's jump right in. And I'm going to select a couple cells in a column here, and then go to the Format menu, and then select Conditional Formatting. Now, the first option here is we can select the Apply to range. In other words, where in the spreadsheet do we want to apply this rule? So I have a couple cells selected, but I'm going to apply it to the whole column just like that. And now the next option is Formatting Rules. So this is determining when do we want to highlight this. And so we can pick things like, is the cell empty? And so you can see right there, that one's not highlighted. Is it not empty? Now you can see everything highlighted except for the empty one. And you can go down through this as well. So text contains, does it contain certain text? So for example, there we highlight Simon, and does not contain, so then everything but Simon. And then starts with, and so some of these seem to be very similar, right? Contains, starts with, and exactly. So contains just means it has to have that within it. So to take a quick look at this, let's switch to column C. And then let's do this. We'll start with business. Now you can see business technology and business are both highlighted. So we can actually go back to contains as well, and the same thing applies. So this is just about what it contains anywhere in the cell. So for example, we could change this to technology. And now you can see that business no longer highlighted, but business and consumer technology are. Now the starts with means it has to be the beginning of the cell, and then ends with means it has to end with that. So this one would be the same, but if we had other ones ending with ology, we could do something like that, and then everything for the study of would then be highlighted. Then we can do text is exactly, and so for this one, if we do business, you can see now only business is highlighted, not anything with business in it. And so you can use this to kind of determine where you want to land on that. If you want to be more of a loose match, if you want to be a opposite of a match, and then if it needs to be something at the beginning. So for example, if you had something that started with pre, whatever it is, you could do that. If it needs to end with something specific, and so forth. All right, so we'll call that quits for text at the moment, and let's go to the next section, which is dates. So let's go back to A here, and then change this to date is. And so here it is, date is today. So if we scroll down, we can see now today's date is highlighted. And so when you have date is, you have multiple selections that you can do automatically, or you can type in an actual date here if you want something specific. So 2026, just like that. And then you can see that specific date highlighted. Now the other options is date is before. And then again, you can do the same thing like this. And then if you do after, the same thing. Now what happens if this doesn't meet your criteria? Like what happens if you want a range? So if I want, let's say, everything in March to be highlighted, how would I do it from the selection? So that's where we go to our third section here. And these are all about numbers. So the first one's about text, or the cell contents here. Then we have dates, and then we have numbers. But you can use these for dates as well. And so, for example, here we have is between. And so we could do something like this. So everything between March 1st and March 31st, and now you can see it's all highlighted within that range. So that's a way you can highlight specific ranges, just like that. And then you can still do the greater than, less than, and so forth. So you could do something like greater than this, and then everything like that is highlighted. You could do less than, and so forth. All right, so let's jump into the numbers here, not with dates. Let's go ahead and switch this to our D column. And then now instead of a date here, we could do something like less than 500. And now you can see everything less than 500 is highlighted. And so we'll go into formatting in a second on how we can format that. So let's go ahead and leave this in place, and then let's look at formatting styles. So formatting styles is how you can format whatever meets that criteria. And so we have some basic ones like bold, italic, and underline. We even have strike through. And then here you can change the color of the text. So you can leave it blank. So none means it's going to remain the default. So if you had black text originally, if you leave it at none, it's not going to change it at all. And then if you want to go none here, for example, you could go something like this, and it's just highlighting the text, not changing the background. Or we could go flip back and do that, and then change it something like this. And now you can see, maybe if we especially go darker, you can see that text may be a little hard to read. And so this might be a case where you want to change the text to something contrasting so you can more easily see it. So it's just a couple examples of the different kinds of highlighting you can do. And whenever you're done with that rule, you can click Done. Now you may be wondering, where'd that rule go? So when you're looking at this sidebar, you have to be in the range to be able to see this. So if you need to see all the rules on a tab or a sheet, click up here in the upper left between A and 1, and then you'll see all the rules. So let's go ahead and add another rule here, just so you can see how that works. So let's do something like, we'll highlight Daniel, and let's just do something like this, and make sure it applies to the whole column. And there we go. So now we can see Daniel. If we click in here, we can see that number rule. And then if we click up here, we can now see both. So you can see anything applied on that tab or that sheet when you click up here on the upper left and you have the whole sheet selected. And so then if you need to delete a rule, you can simply click that remove rule icon. So how do you get back to the sidebar? Like, for example, if you're like this and you're like, I've selected this, I'm not seeing the rules. So at this point, you want to go to Format, Conditional Formatting, and now you can see those rules there just like that. All right, so next, let's look at how to stack a couple of rules. So we can have multiple rules in the same range. So for example, here we have values less than 500. So we could add another one here. And so if you go into a rule and scroll down and click Add Another Rule, you can copy that rule and then modify it. So for example, here we could say less than 1,000. And then maybe we'll change this to a orange or a yellow, something like that. And so there we go, just like that. Now here's something interesting, is you may be applying this and this is the result you get. And you're like, well, I said if it's less than 500, it needs to be red. Why are they now all orange? And if you look at the rule, values less than 1,000, well, everything less than 500 also fits this rule. So the order is important. And so you can literally just drag them up and down, but this actually allows you greater flexibility to stack rules like this. Otherwise, technically, this one, what you want to do is values less than 500, and this one you'd want basically is between 500 and 1,000. And then now if we move this up, now it's not overwriting, but this makes it more complicated to write. And so it does make it easier typically if you do something like this, and then you just stack it smartly to put them in the order that you need. All right, and so to wrap up, let's look at a couple other things. So we did not look at checkboxes yet. So let's go ahead and add another rule here. And then let's add this in E2 to E. So you can also select data range, and then you can select it. So we can select it just like that. Make sure we delete that end reference and then hit OK. And now on this one, so what do you do with checkboxes? Is it text? Is it numbers? What's going on? So if you click on a cell, if you come up here, you can see there it says false. And if we click on this one, it says true. So even though it appears like a checkbox, ultimately it is a text of true or false. And so we could do something like this. Text is exactly true. And then you can see just the true ones are highlighted like that. And then again, you can change this color to whatever you want, or you could always do this to none. You could change just the text to a specific color like that, and whatever suits your fancy. So it's up to you how you want to do that. You could add a little bit of background as well if you want something like that for your look. And then finally, let's go ahead and look at this issue column, and let's go ahead and add a rule here. And then what we're going to do is let's just do if not empty. So we could set this to text is exactly yes, or we could set it to not empty. And then maybe this issue one could be multiple. So it could be maybe describing instead of saying yes, it could just be issue is billing, issue is whatever it is. And then if they select any issue, then it's going to be highlighted. Maybe we'll change this one to like a red, like that. And now anytime you select yes, it'll be highlighted in that color. All right, so that is it for today's video. Make sure to check out the other videos on our channel for more tutorials on conditional formatting in Google Sheets, along with other tutorials on Google Sheets and Google Apps Script. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.